It's been known for some time that Skype, the popular standalone peer-to-peer application specializing in providing video chat and voice call services, was initially developed by the CIA, contrary to the official story regarding its origins. Marketed for its groundbreaking proprietary internet telephony protocol, its real purpose was data mining and domestic surveillance. The defense-enabling and assisting framework is the one telephone application that will protect your personal communications from any surveillance mechanisms the government can invent. Visit us at defprotection.com. That's defprotection.com. The case of a missing boy. In today's world, that particular travesty would garner the utmost attention from the authorities, knowing what fate may possibly await the child. But one case received the wrong type of attention, where the mother was deemed insane and forced to be institutionalized, when the only thing she wanted was to find her missing son. What transpired was to shock the world in its deviance and the enabling forces that allowed certain crimes to continue. On February 2, 1928, LA County Sheriff's deputies discovered a headless corpse in a burlap sack in the La Puente ditch. The teenager appeared to have been shot through the heart with a small caliber firearm. On March 28, 1928, Christine Collins gave her son, Walter Collins, some money to attend the cinema. The boy was last seen at 5 p.m. on that day by a neighbor at the corner of Pasadena Avenue and North Avenue 23 in Lincoln Heights in Los Angeles. Christine had been raising her son ever since her husband stood incarcerated in Folsom State Prison for robbery. The Los Angeles Police Department had been called out for the numerous scandals they had been involved with at this time. Christine Collins repeatedly urged the LAPD to help her find her son. However, for some reason, with the Collins case, LAPD Police Chief James Davis succumbed to a great deal of pressure to solve this case. Walter's father believed that some inmates in Folsom kidnapped his son in order to gain some sort of revenge on him for one reason or another. Walter's father's function at the prison was working in the cafeteria, where he was obligated to report any infractions of the rules that the various inmates may execute. Although there were several leads to find the child, nothing panned out. One interesting facet of the case occurred when a local gas station attendant in Glendale, California, Richard Struthers, stated that he saw the body of a young dead boy wrapped in newspaper in the back of a car when a foreign couple stopped to ask for directions. Another man, C.V. Staley, followed the couple after they left the gas station, and they eventually lost Staley when they sped out of town. When the authorities later showed Struthers and Staley photos of Walter Collins, they both identified the boy in the back of the car as indeed little Walter. Other reports came in that a couple traveled throughout California with a young boy in the back of their car who kept screaming to be released. Additionally, at approximately the same time, on May 16, 1928, two brothers, Nelson and Louis Winslow, 10 and 12-year-olds respectively, went missing while on their way home in Pomona, California. Strangely, the parents received letters from the two stating that they were heading to Mexico, and the second letter stated they were going to stay there until they became famous. At first, the authorities did not believe the Collins and Winslow cases demonstrated any connections, nor did they see any similarities between the Collins Winslow, and the case of the headless corpse that they found in the La Puente ditch. There were reports, however, of a neighbor who witnessed a poultry farmer in Wineville, California, who had been mistreating a boy at his farm. Authorities also did not believe this connected to the other three cases as well. In August of 1928, Illinois police picked up a young boy who identified himself as Arthur Kent. When asked where the boy was from, he stated that his father abandoned the family, so authorities placed little Arthur in the care of a foster family until other relatives of the boy surfaced. After a few days, Arthur told the police his name was Walter Collins and he came from Los Angeles, and he had been avoiding their questions to protect his father. The Illinois police contacted the Los Angeles police and even sent photos of the boy claiming to be Walter. Eventually, the boy claiming to be Walter arrived in Los Angeles, and Christine Collins immediately stated that the young child was not her son. After some cajoling from LAPD Captain J.J. Jones, Christine tried out the young boy as her son. 3 weeks after the young boy claiming to be Walter stayed with Christine, she strolled into the local police precinct with her son's dental records and signed affidavits from people who knew Walter, stating that the imposter was not her son. Captain Jones immediately referred to Christine as a lunatic and attempted to get the state of California to take over custody of the boy, and he truly believed she tried to embarrass the LAPD. Christine's actions were not meant to put the LAPD in a bad light. They were already there regarding their handling of the case thus far. Captain Jones then had Christine committed to a psychiatric ward at the Los Angeles County General Hospital on what was known as a Code 12, where police could commit what they termed troublemakers by throwing them into insane asylums. As Christine sat in the psychiatric ward in September 1928, a Canadian woman named Winifred Clark communicated with American authorities and stated that her nephew kidnapped and held her son, Sanford Wesley Clark, somewhere in California. Jessie Clark, Wesley's 15-year-old sister, became worried when her brother ventured 2 years before to live with her uncle, Gordon Stewart Northcott, age 21 at the time. Jessie then went to Northcott's farm in Wineville, California, just to make a wellness visit for her brother. Jessie learned disturbing things occurred at the farm and became very alarmed when she witnessed Northcott physically abusing her brother and believed that her uncle was involved in something very strange. At this point, when Jessie expressed her fears, Northcott abused her as well. Urged to speak with police, Sanford spoke with officers and related that his uncle did kidnap him, abuse him physically, and abuse him sexually. Sanford also related with much horror how he witnessed the torture and murder of other young boys at the farm, specifically the murders of Walter Collins, Nelson Winslow, and Louis Winslow, along with other boys. At times, Sanford stated that his uncle forced him to participate with the abuse and the murders. Northcott, according to his nephew, abducted young boys to sexually abuse them, and when he got bored, he would lead them into the incubator room to see hatchling chicks, and then he murdered them with an axe. Northcott later covered the bodies with quicklime to enhance decomposition, then buried them. Sanford also tried to help the police in stating that he did kill a young Latino boy in La Puente. Sadly, both Sanford and Northcott murdered Walter Collins. The reason for Walter's death, according to the authorities' newest witness, was that Walter witnessed Northcott assist in the murder of another man. Sanford then stated he would lead the police to the graves of the murdered boys near the chicken coop on the farm. Once the authorities went to the chicken farm, they located axes where hair, blood, and brain matter still clung to the blades. Further digging around the farm exposed graves loaded with human bones. The bones were later identified as those of male children. Inside of the Northcott house, the authorities discovered a book checked out by one of the Winslow boys. Whistles, Boy Scout uniforms, and other materials belonging to some of the known victims were found within the house as well. Letters to parents were also discovered, possibly composed for future abductions. With all the materials they found within the Northcott compound, nothing there at the time connected Walter Collins's disappearance to Northcott. The only thing authorities did not find at the Northcott farm was Northcott himself and his mother. They fled just as the police made their way to the farm. Northcott's father, Cyrus George Northcott, informed the police that his son already admitted to the murders before he and Louise Northcott left town. Cyrus Northcott knew his son exhibited a sort of perversion, and he and Louise Northcott purchased the farm for their son to work in the hopes that his habits would change. Most importantly, Cyrus Northcott informed police that Clark's story of the farm was trustworthy. Police arrested the elder Northcott and held him as a material witness. Although the LAPD kept insisting that Christine Collins had her son back, she refused to believe that this young changeling was her son. Only after the handwriting of little Walter and the changeling had been compared, it demonstrated that a great fraud had been perpetrated upon Christine Collins. After a while of continued questioning, the fake Walter admitted several aliases. This young boy, Arthur Hutchinson, assumed Collins's identity in an attempt to go to Hollywood to meet his then idol, Tom Mix. After this admission, Hutchinson's mother came out from Illinois and collected the boy from Los Angeles, returning home. Arthur Hutchinson had no remorse and lacked any contrition at portraying a missing child and playing a trick on a bereaved mother. Subsequent to Hutchinson's return to Illinois, hospital administrators released Christine Collins from their care. On September 21, 1928, with authorities in all the western states and Canada searching for him for weeks, Gordon Stewart Northcott was arrested in British Columbia along with his mother Louise. As the two sat in a Canadian jail, a grand jury in Los Angeles County indicted the two for murder and charged them accordingly. Throughout the ordeal of discovery and the fight for extradition, Northcott denied having anything to do with the murders. In December, LAPD authorities brought Northcott back to the farm, and upon arriving there, he verbally confessed to the 5 murders, including the Winslow brothers, Walter Collins, and a 15-year-old Mexican boy named Jose Ayala. The confession to Ayala's murder was taken down in written form. Louise Northcott confessed to delivering the final blow to Walter Collins with an axe. Mrs. Northcott then buried young Walter in a hole dug in the chicken coop. Police later discovered that Louise would do anything to help her son. That even involved murder. Sanford Clark stated that his grandmother related that if he even touched one of the boys, he would also be complicit in their deaths. The trial of the state of California versus Gordon Stewart Northcott began in January 1929. One of the bizarre facets of this case occurred when Northcott insisted that he represent himself rather than accept the representation of some very knowledgeable attorneys, especially those who had been involved with murder trials previously. Northcott complained that his life had been threatened while he awaited trial in jail. Although Northcott maintained that he may be insane, alienists Drs. W.B. Wells and Dr. M. Webster determined that the defendant exhibited no traits of insanity. As the old saying goes, he who represents himself has a fool for a client. Northcott demonstrated no acumen of courtroom decorum, nor any protocols when it came to questioning witnesses. Through Sanford Clark, Northcott hoped that his questioning of the youth would demonstrate that the bones found at the farm were those of animals rather than human. When the defendant asked the questions, he added to the witness's testimony that he remembered having 3 dogs on the farm that died and eventually buried them on the property. Later in the trial, when Northcott brought his mother to the stand to testify, Louise Northcott stated that she was not Gordon Northcott's mother. The defendant's real mother was Winifred Clark, the defendant's aunt. This caused a massive controversy within the court, but no other corroborating evidence surfaced during the trial to substantiate Mrs. Northcott's assertions. On February 8, 1929, after sending deputies on several wild goose chases to the farm time and again, Northcott stood convicted of 3 counts of murder and faced the gallows. When the jury reached their verdict, They recommended no mercy upon the defendant. The deputy district attorney at the time of the conviction, Earl Redwine, stated, "Northcott was the lowest of all humans, a diabolical wretch who was the worst fiend Riverside County ever had the misfortune to harbor. He has forfeited all right to live, but if I thought that life imprisonment meant life imprisonment, I might consider such a verdict." Redwine elaborated that in order for the people of California to make sure that Northcott received his just punishment, he must be sentenced to death, as a future parole board would release the killer back into society within a few years. The residents of California would not tolerate a monster walking on their street when he took the lives of innocent young children. The judge in the case actually agreed and sentenced Northcott to hang by the neck until he was dead. In September 1929, the California Supreme Court gave leave to Northcott's counsel to file briefs in favor of a new trial. The Supreme Court also ruled that the judge at the trial level should have appointed another counsel for the defendant after Northcott fired his attorney. Even though this may have been a procedural faux pas, the Supreme Court reluctantly denied a new trial for the murderer. The day before his scheduled execution, on October 1st, 1930, Christine Collins went to the prison to speak with Northcott regarding the disappearance of her son. Christine believed that her son was still alive and attempted to get any details from the convicted murder. Christine Collins stated that the interview with Northcott was worse than useless. Also on this day, Northcott said goodbye to his parents. At approximately 10 a.m., Gordon Stewart Northcott walked from the death cell to the foot of the gallows. The young murderer, who so defiantly stood before the court and denied any involvement in the murders of the young boys at his family farm, walked with limited bravery to the gallows and then began sobbing before climbing the steps. 3 prison guards had to take a firm grasp of the condemned man and escort him up the steps to his punishment. At 10:10 a.m., Northcott fell through the trap door, snapping his neck. At another part of the prison, his mother, Louise, could be heard sobbing uncontrollably. In 2008, Clint Eastwood directed the fact-based drama Changeling. The movie was based on the events surrounding the Wineville chicken coop murders, but focused on Christina Collins, who was portrayed by Angelina Jolie. Although the film focused on the struggle of Christina Collins, the murders were slightly center stage, as that was the reason young Walter disappeared. In examining the criminal behavior of Gordon Stewart Northcott, he would have not eluded law enforcement for long had his mother not enabled his behavior. Truly deviant, and one can say slightly demented, Northcott's psychopathy can only be characterized as a perverted proclivity. We've seen this before on True Crime Man's Dark Imagination, but never where cases intersected with such a powerful story of a mother who just wanted to find her missing son through a sea of corruption and incompetence. After the execution of her son, Sarah Louise Northcott spent 4.5 years at San Quentin Prison and the rest of her time at Talachpi Prison for Women, where she left in 1940. Louise Northcott then went to Maryland, where Cyrus had purchased a farm, and lived there until Cyrus died in April 1944, and Louise followed him in November, respectively. Subsequently, Christina Collins filed a lawsuit against J.J. Jones and won a judgment of $15,000. Unfortunately, a judgment that Jones never paid. Christina Collins died in 1964, never admitting that little Walter was dead. Until next time. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Alan Gotro, your host of True Crime Man's Dark Imagination. I just want to let you know that if you want to help to support the channel, we are on Subscribestar and PayPal, and I will leave the links below. Also, I've published a couple of books on true crime. If you enjoy reading those, they're available at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble, or wherever books may be sold. Stay tuned, we have some new episodes coming up shortly.